Y'all better go green. Yeah, it's time for a change. Time to put my people
The Democratic National Alliance presents the Grand Bahama Economic Summit.
Grand Bahama. How are you doing? What he didn't mention was that I was also a student at Mary Star of the Sea. So I already told our leader I want to be the mayor of Grand Bahama because I got to bring that man y'all sent us in Fort Charlotte back. We don't want him there. We don't want him there. Protocol already being established. I want to begin by saying that on Thursday evening at our Good Governance Town Hall, I made mention that the purpose of a government is to lead its people to the fulfillment of a national vision. When the Democratic National Alliance made its historic entry into the Bahamian political arena, just over, believe it or not, 11 months ago, the goal of the party was to become the next government of the Bahamas so that it could do just that, lead its people to the fulfillment of a national vision. This national vision that was begun in 1973 with the lowering of the Union Jack and the raising of the black aqua and gold that signified that we were a truly independent nation. It is the job of a good government to recognize as well the intellectual and creative brilliance of its people. And allow those people to be owners with the government in the political, cultural, and economic development of the nation. When you see a government that does not want or allow its citizens to play a meaningful role in the nation's development, we get a Bahamas that we live in today. Yes, sir. A place where after years of struggling from sunrise to sunset, many of us are still slaves and bondsmen to some other person more empowered than we are. Yes, sir. We have a place where our labor is still being unfairly exploited for the tight-fisted benefit of others. And a place where our lives, for the most part, and the lives of our brothers and our sisters and our mothers and fathers and children and their friends and family are still being frustrated because we lack meaningful opportunities to do something with our lives above just ordinary. Speak the truth. As we go into these final stages of this election season, this political season, I want you to use your past experience with both of these two political parties that are now coming before you, interviewing to be the next government of the Bahamas. And I want you to determine if either one seeks to address or provide truthful answers as to why your island, Grand Bahama, and the entire Bahamas for that matter, is continuing to fail. If you'll notice, and that's probably why every night they're from island to island to island to island, rallying you, because if they continue to rally you, you'll forget that you had problems. You'll forget that you had issues because you are so rallied up. But when the rally is over, you'll be suffering for another 4 years and they'll try to rally you again so you'll forget. Don't forget. I'm going to tell you what your man of business said. In a speech right here in January 2012, this is what the Honorable Junior Minister of Finance said. This is what he gave as the cause of the economic crash here in Grand Bahama from 2007 to 2011. He said, it was the onset of the great global recession. This killed investment and the tourism industry. He said it was the continued uncertainty surrounding the ownership cohesion at the Grand Bahama Port Authority and its limited promotional efforts. He said it was the continuing decline in construction activity. And when I listened to that, all I heard was a failed government. A government that did not want to take responsibility for its people. Failed government. He said, this is what they listed as their efforts to spark some growth there in Grand Bahama. He said they searched out investors for Grand Bahama, and this was what their success story was for you. Ross University, First Reserve, and then Buckeye in the purchase of Borco, Statoil. He said, and it's tens of millions of dollars. He didn't say how many specifically. He just said tens of millions. We'd like to know how many tens, millions. Grand Bahama Shipyard, Isles of Capri, and Imera. These were what he said. And I don't know how these things have impacted your life here in Grand Bahama.
He reached me yet.
Well, he agreed with you. He said, these, of course, were not enough to make any significant dent in the island's troubled employment and general economic circumstances. And he ended by saying, but some effort was made. My Lord, my Lord. Y'all sent that man to Fort Charlotte. We don't want him there. Return to sender. I will extradite him from Fort Charlotte back to Marco City to face the people of Marco City. He needs to deal with them first. We're going to tell the delivery boy, return to sender.
As an entrepreneur and a small business owner, small business in any society is the backbone of that economy. We must focus on ensuring the empowerment of small business. I believe that we must allow small business to flourish by giving them accessibility to a lot of the capital projects. Funding, for example, the roadway project. The funding of the goods and service should have been to the hands of small business owners. Sourcing of the goods, even as a broker, will make sure that the wealth, all of that $300+ million that we're spending on that project will stay in the Bahamas, and Bahamians will spread that money throughout society. And so we have to focus on small business. The DNA, our solution, is to make sure that we accommodate, facilitate the funding of small businesses to the point where they can stand on their own and then run with that. And with small business will create more employment, and more employment will make sure that the economy is vibrant.
See that unless we change along with it and chart a new course for Grand Bahama and for our Bahamas, just like that boat out at sea is going to end up someplace where we don't want to be. And you know where that is? Right where we are. A country where people have to sleep on Tino Beach, where lights are off in homes all across our country, where people can't put their children in schools that they want to put them in, where they can't find food to eat. That is not our Bahamas. But we have a way to deal with that. And this is an economic summit. So I don't want to spend time like they do telling you all the reasons why we are where we are. I want to talk about how we are going to get where we want to go. And the way we are going to do that is we are going to have to broaden the base of our Bahamas. We're going to have to broaden the economic base of our country, and specifically Grand Bahama. This is the Magic City. We have to bring the magic back to the Magic City. Do you agree with me? I'm sure, Grand Bahama, Do you understand what is at stake? Well, first off is job creation. And how do we do that? We are going to empower Grand Bahamians like never before. A DNA government will allow the human creativity to access the adequate funding while reducing the cost of business. And we will encourage new businesses, create niche markets to diversify our economy and generate jobs. Because the DNA's purpose in this election is to foster the environment to allow our people to create jobs in their own economy. And so we will create a small business act to encourage entrepreneurship. And a DNA government will mandate that all percentage of government contracts will be awarded to small businesses right here in Grand Bahama. A DNA government is going to work to lower the cost of funding so that entrepreneurs here in Grand Bahama will have a real shot of accessing the funding necessary to make your dreams a reality. A DNA government will, just like we do to everybody else, we allow those foreigners to come in, we take the platinum rug and we kick it down there, we roll it out for them and say, bring it on, bring it on. Your DNA government is going to do this. You as a Bahamian will be able to get the same red carpet platinum treatment that every other foreign investor gets. You will get it right here in your own country.
Shame on you. Fool me twice. Shame on me. Grand Bahama and the Bahamas. We cannot continue on the course we are going.
No.
Change must come, and that change, Grand Bahama, can only come when there are generations of leaders like us and people like you who has a vision to unite against and challenge head on the political status quo who for decades has denied us as a people the right to have the semblance of power that independence promised. We all know Proverbs 29, you know. We know it. We know when it says that where there is no vision, where there is no vision, the people perish. And Grand Bahamians, you know better than most that we are beginning to perish at a tremendously fast rate.
Yes, sir.
The fact of the matter is that successive governments have failed us miserably.
Yes, sir.
After 44 years of back and forth voting and vain talk, neither has yet to put in place any broad-based programs to grow our economy, nor have they created or presented any concrete long-term financial development that will help us to reduce our $4.5 billion debt that they got us into, only to have it hang over our heads, our children's heads, and the heads of our children's children. That's a very serious thing. Do you know what $1 billion is? $1 billion. That's plenty money. 1 billion seconds ago, it was 1959. That's a serious thing. 1 billion minutes ago. Do you know what happened? 1 billion minutes ago, Christ walked the earth. 1 billion days ago was the Ice Age. And 1 billion weeks ago was before recorded history. We have a $4.5 billion debt. As the CEOs of this great island nation, ladies and gentlemen, you have every right to say to the F&M and the PLP, you have failed to live up to the obligations to the citizens of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and it is time for you to go. No makeups, no do-overs. You Grand Bahamians and the Bahamas at large, you must fire them. You know, the election bell is rung, and the rallies have started. Hundreds, listen, I know, because we don't have it. Hundreds of thousands of dollars are being spent on these rallies. When you have people out there who cannot buy food. I said before this campaign even begun, if we had that kind of money, we would put that to good use to help those who are less fortunate. Indeed, for the past few weeks, I have listened to the usual political rhetoric by those other parties. And guess what? Nothing has changed. The name calling. Who is a better man than Home? Who is overweight? Who has gray hair? Who is lazy? Who is weak? Who is a dictator? That sort of rhetoric continues to starve the Bahamian electorate from the real issues that we as a country are faced with. Don't be fooled, Bahamians.
You one of those Grand Bahamians that believe that we are more than just a second city?
Are you one of those that believe that we deserve more attention from our government?
True representation from our leaders.
And real change in the way things are done?
Are you one of those that believe that we should have more dialogue with the Port Authority?
And start protecting the interests of Grand Bahamians?
Are you one of those
tired of being ignored?
Of unemployment?
Are you one of those that are tired of high energy prices?
We can do better. We must demand more from our government and from ourselves.
The challenges facing Grand Bahama and Bimini are great.
But the spirit of Grand Bahamians is even greater.
We deserve better. We can do better. And together, Grand Bahama will be great again.
We have had 45 years of governance collectively under the PLP and the F&M, and I am sad to say that the majority of Bahamians have seen none, zilch, real economic empowerment. None. Look where you are today. That's your answer. Now they want us to believe that the next 5 years is for you. The next 5 years, not the past 45 years, the next 5 years. That's for you all. That's what they're saying out there. My God, as the chairman always says, my God, my God, my God. They can't be serious. You know, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different result, that is called insanity. Bahamians ain't insane. Last night, the PLP had a rally in Nassau, and tonight, the F&M is having a rally in Freeport. They're partying. Oh, and I think the PLP is having a rally here tonight as well, eh? They're having fun. You hear the music. You hear the music. The performances and the sound bites. I must admit, they really know how to throw a good party. Ain't no doubt about that. But for Christ's sake, they've been doing that for the last 4 decades. But I ask you tonight, Grand Bahama, when the rally is over, are you better off?
No.
Are you better off? Indeed. You get the impression at these rallies that everything was and is all right. But when the rallies are over, you must take stock of reality and know the Bahamas we are living in today. A Bahamas that suffers the worst crime rate in the history of this Bahamas. A Bahamas that has the worst illegal immigration problem in its history. And you know what I'm talking about, illegal immigration, eh? They scared. They ain't gonna do it. A Bahamas that has an education system that is producing D-average students, resulting in our students not being able to compete on the world stage. A Bahamas with a national debt, 4.5 billion and growing. You're right. We need to take those cards from those junglers. Those credit cards got to go. They don't know how to handle money, you know. They don't know. You know, we're in the Bahamas where the misery index is the worst it has ever been in the history of the Bahamas. And we are in a Bahamas today where the people are losing hope. They're losing hope. There is hopelessness and despair in Grand Bahama. And you're partying, you're dancing, you're drinking. Yet when all the rallies are over, and more so when the election has come and gone, many of us will not have a house to go to. Many of us will not be able to go to a house with the electricity on. Many of us will still have to try to find a job. Many of us will have no food in the cupboard or on the table. Many of us will not be able to have those school fees for our children. Many of us will not have a car to drive or money to catch the bus. Many of us will not even be able to buy gas if we have a car to put in the car, or indeed pay the insurance for the car. Well, listen. You know, for many of us, reality will set in, just as it was before the rallies started. The party is over and we are back to the stage of hopelessness. Yes, yes, the party is over. And the hangover sets in. Ladies and gentlemen, if we were doing well in Grand Bahama and in the Bahamas as a whole, we would be living it now. All is not well. I don't care what they say, all is not well because you feel it and you know it.
Yes, sir.
The mission of the DNA is to ensure that the needs and aspirations of Bahamian people to be owners with the government in the political, cultural, and economic development of the nation are met. The DNA is devoted to upholding protecting and deepening the democratic rule of law in society by promoting openness and accountability. I think you've heard this before. In governmental affairs, and we spoke in depth about this on Thursday night when we had a last town meeting on good governance. And the right of the people to self-governance and authority in determining their own destiny. The vision of the DNA is to transform the Bahamas into a nation where Bahamian people will be esteemed, you, as the most precious resource. Above all, natural and material resources. And the nurturing of our intellectual and creative brilliance will help us become a genuinely democratic, economically prosperous, and socially mobile 21st century nation. Ladies and gentlemen, the root of our economic problem in the Bahamas can be described as a double dependency syndrome. A double dependency syndrome. Most persons depend on the government for everything. And in turn, the government depends on the foreign investor for everything. The problem is when the foreign dollars stop flowing, everything comes to a grinding halt. Now, you don't think them other boys don't know this by now? My Jesus, they've been here for a long time, eh? Quite frankly, the government is the largest employer in the country today, and we can change that, primarily because our two main industries, have never provided enough employment, as manifested by the fact that even before, listen carefully, even before the financial crisis, we had a structural unemployment of 10.2%, which is higher than the current levels in the United States of 8.7%. The current levels of the unemployment in the United States. And they, that is the United States, are crying about these rates, even though they are lower than what the Bahamas experienced prior to the financial crisis. The fact of the matter is that our economy is fractured, faulty, fruitless, and futureless. Fractured because it is not working. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
Faulty because of the many factors that are not allowing it to function. Fruitless because it is not productive.
No.
And futureless because it, in its present form, cannot be sustainable. We in the DNA believe that the job of the government is to adhere to the basic economic mandate that will provide an environment in which all Bahamians, all, will have an opportunity to be able to live the Bahamian dream. The Bahamian dream. You haven't heard that word in a long time. The Bahamian dream. That is to have the chance to own their slice of the pie. And not just be the recipient of the economic crumbs that fall from the table of the direct foreign investor and the special interest group. You know, who gets all of the government contracts and special favors. An environment where every man, woman, and child has an opportunity to ascend the social and economic ladder based on his or her meritocracy, hard work, and God-given talents. An environment where Bahamians are the real owners of the economy. and not one in which 85% of every tourist dollar leaves or never enters the country. An environment in which 99% of all offshore banks are foreign owned. An environment in which 85% of all of our food is imported. This is an environment in which Bahamians have become an endangered species. No economy, listen to me, no economy can be self-sustained when all of the capital is being sucked out of it every day to enrich persons in other countries. No country, none can survive if it has no food security. You know, if all imports of food were cut off today, the Bahamas would only have enough food for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Listen to this. As recently as several weeks ago at the College of the Bahamas, our two primary fiscal policy makers clearly indicated that they will stick to the economic status quo. That means ain't nothing to change. Minister of State for Finance, who ran from Marco City with his tail between his legs, ran. He said that we are going to stick with banking and tourism, but gave no indication of what the plans are to grow these sectors of the economy. The governor of the central bank said that our recovery will depend on what happens in the United States, without any further reference to what we can do ourselves to make things better. Now, they are now in the process of establishing a new committee to look into how we can deal with the national debt some 4 years after the financial crisis. And listen to this, with the same set of people who got us into this unholy mess. That don't make sense. So let's take a look at what concerns are to our economy. And then I will tell you what the DNA plans to do to fix our economy. The external concerns are, firstly, the U.S. economy recovery. Secondly, the European economy recovery. Thirdly, the slowdown in the Chinese economy. And fourthly, the price of oil. Ladies and gentlemen, both the American and European economies are still in turmoil and are not expected to recover for quite some time. As a result of this, there will be two outcomes. Firstly, Americans and Europeans will have less disposable income and thus travel less. Secondly, the US in particular may experience inflation, which means that so too will the Bahamas. You heard that?
Yes, sir.
Because we will import that inflation. And the Chinese economy has begun to slow down, which means that the demand for commodities will also slow down. And because the world is so interconnected, we will all feel the impact. The continued impact of the unrest in the Middle East, especially in Iran, will continue to put upward pressure on the price of oil, which, as you know, will increase the price of just about everything, especially food and transportation. For the most part, these are things which are beyond our control, but not totally. Especially if we do things I will discuss in a moment. Let's look at the internal concerns that we have. There's been a failure of successive governments to do their job properly. And as a result, we are now at the end of what can be called a super ineptitude cycle, which has resulted in the following: massive unemployment in the Bahamas, massive debt, an educational crisis, an energy crisis, a housing crisis, and a destruction of the Bahamian middle class. This is because of a failure of successive governments. Those same fellows out there, the PLP and the FNM, to adhere to the necessary economic mandates, or put another way, bad management by successive governments, the PLP and the FNM. You know, as a people, we ought to know what government's supposed to do. We ought to know. Knowledge is power. Governments are supposed to maintain an environment in which there can be employment, but not to be the primary employer. That is the private sector's job. Indeed, successive governments have done the opposite. Secondly, governments are supposed to provide an environment that is conducive to innovation, entrepreneurship, and local ownership. No matter what your political persuasion, you must agree that this has not happened. Governments are supposed to provide infrastructure, physical, educational, technological, and institutional. This has not happened. It has been assessed that we need $2 billion of infrastructural work to be done and to put us where we ought to be as a country. That's how far behind we are. Today we have 85% of our public school students failing math. You hear that? The Massey report. 85% failing math. And 55% failing English. That does not bode well for our future. Governments are supposed to ensure that the national security is in place. Our borders are not being protected. There's a lack of border patrol. There's gun running, fish poaching, drug smuggling, human trafficking, and illegal immigration. I certainly don't have to tell you tonight that crime is way out of control. I think we're up to 37 murders. 37 murders. And we deliver. We deliver.
When I look at what's going on in our country economically, I'm very concerned. When I read in the newspapers that unemployment in New Providence is about 15%, one main reason that we are in the situation that we are in is simply because we lack financial creativity. We need a government who understands that it is necessary to build small and medium-sized businesses. Foreign investors will take their revenues out of the country, whereas local businesses keep the profits in the country. We cannot continue to rely on foreigners to be the key components of our economy. We lose out significantly by not being in charge of our economy. And today, we're not. If we do not own the largest share or the lion's share of our economy, really and truly, we don't own our country.
Government should have a balanced budget. I heard the Prime Minister say every day, we borrow every day. We can have a balanced budget. Take the credit card from that man. He knows not what he does. This has not happened. A balanced budget has not happened since independence. You know, governments are supposed to control the national debt. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the national debt is $4.5 billion and climbing. And I told you what $1 billion is all about. Governments are supposed to increase export capacity. We as a country have a trade deficit every year. We are consuming more than we are producing every year. You understand? We are consuming more than what we are producing every year. So based on the economic state our country is in now, That's Rocky. Rocky's going to run in term after next for the DNA. If you are to grade successive governments on their performance on a scale from A to Z, it would be as follows. From A to Z, jobs, H, hard to find. Entrepreneurship, N, non-existent. Bahamianization of the economy, L, lacking. Infrastructure, C, chaotic. National security, O. My wife gave me another letter, but I can't use that. Out of control. The Bahamian budget, F, failure. National debt, D, deep. National Economic Plan, S, still trying to find it. Ladies and gentlemen, the DNA proposes to put in place a new National Economic Council made up of qualified persons and not just the Prime Minister and his merry men. The fact of the matter is that the present council's decision, in essence, is determined by only one man, and this should not be the case, especially when all of our former prime ministers have served as Minister of Finance, but had very little understanding of finance, or indeed have not been fiscally prudent in their own financial affairs. This council will be made up of bipartisan and economically and financially competent individuals who will help the government implement its new National Economic Plan and assist the government on economic and financial policy decisions. The country cannot afford to be further downgraded. The key is to reduce government spending in such a way that the economy is not adversely impacted. There must also be a formation of a national procurement agency that will stop gross wastage and overspending on special interest groups. Government leases ought to be renegotiated, and there ought to be captive insurance for medical insurance of civil servants. There must be an audit of pension liabilities. The high cost of living in the Bahamas, ladies and gentlemen, must be reduced. We can't take this anymore. You can't survive. This can be done by the removal of import duties to sales and service tax. We must look at alternative energy and consider the relaxation of exchange controls. Interest rates at the central bank must be decreased. These are things the government can do. The economic success of all countries is determined by the availability and judicious use of the four essential national assets: food, energy resources, land, and human capital. The Bahamas has an abundance, and our deputy spoke about this, of all of these assets, but we have not availed ourselves or made the best use of them. I'm going to concentrate on land. The term crown land needs to be changed to stake land, as this land now belongs to the Bahamian people and not the crown in England. All state land should be rezoned as residential, commercial, industrial, touristic, farmland, wetlands, and forestry. All state crown land should then be placed in a national land bureau that would be mandated by government but managed by the private sector in a fair and transparent way. The Bahamas Mortgage Corporation and the Bahamas Development Bank will then be recapitalized with funds from the government, the National Insurance Board, pension funds, and the private sector. It would also be necessary to repopulate the management and board of directors of each of these financial institutions with a team of qualified and accountable persons. These two entities would then become the primary lending facilities for persons desirous of purchasing a piece of crown land or stake land. The Bahamas Mortgage Corporation would be responsible for funding residential purchases at a rate of 3 to 5% interest. And the Bahamas Development Bank for all other non-residential purposes, commercial, industrial, and touristic, but at a slightly higher rate of interest, 5 to 7%, because of the greater risk involved. No land zoned forestry or wetlands would be sold, and any farmland would only be leased. Foreign entities would be prohibited from buying any land earmarked for tourism. But where appropriate, would be able to lease the land on a long-term basis. I am of the opinion that if this approach were to be adopted, then the best use could be made of stake land that is available, and the procurement process would be fair and transparent. Listen to me, people. At present, all of the crown/stake land is controlled by the office of the Prime Minister. This individual single-handedly determines the distribution of all crown land. All. All. There is never any public disclosure of these transactions. The criteria used in the allocation process, the current status of how much land is available, who the current leaseholders are, whether or not they are paying, whether or not the land is being used for the intended purpose, and if the current leaseholders are up to date with their payments. Such system lends itself to abuse, corruption, and nepotism. This approach, the approach that the DNA would have, would provide the opportunity for many Bahamians to purchase land relatively inexpensive, as Chris indicated. They would then have a chance to own a piece of the rock and build a home. This now creates economic activity in the form of mortgages, construction, sale of household goods, real property taxes, and utility bill payments. Another positive economic impact of this approach would be increased competition in the banking system for mortgages, which would result in lower, hopefully, mortgage payments, and thus more disposable income for other mortgages and mortgagees, which would result in more economic activity in the country. There are acres and acres of generation property all over the Bahamas, all over, especially the family islands. There's no reason why this land cannot be regularized and the rightful owners be granted clear title to their properties. There are laws that could be used to rectify the situation, and if additional laws are needed, then they could be enacted. Granted, this would be a hard task. It's not a small task. I know that. But it must be done. It must be done. The fact that it's hard does not mean it should not be done. It needs to be sorted out. And once this problem is resolved, there will be hundreds of new family island millionaires. Right, Chris Mortimer? Land is wealth, people. Land is wealth. Land is wealth. We want to make millionaires. This is the way you do it. They will have access to land which they will be able to sell, build on, or use as collateral for whatever purpose. And this will increase economic activity in our country. You think these guys with all the experience could do that? They talk about all this experience they got. If they did have all the right experience, this would have been in place. I cry shame on them. You know, such land reform would benefit all Bahamians, the government and the Bahamian economy. After all, economics is about making the best use of available resources, and land is certainly one of those resources. There must be diversification of our economy. You know, this is taboo to those other leaders, you know, that word diversification. You know, the Prime Minister has said, we only got tourism. He said that. He grew up in that era. The world has moved on. Mr. Prime Minister, the world has moved on. As your government, the DNA will, listen to the word carefully, diversify the economy by supporting and expanding agriculture and mariculture with a commitment to the Bahamas' exorbitant 500 million, I think it's almost 600 million now, food import bill. We will establish an aircraft and maintenance industry. We will encourage the growth of a manufacturing industry both in Grand Bahama and throughout the country. We will promote economic empowerment for all by providing a high-quality education system which will directly and positively impact economic growth and entrepreneurship. We will promote cultural tourism by investing, yes, in you, the local talent, entertainers, heritage and amusement parks. We will expand sports tourism, religious tourism, medical tourism, which includes medical schools, clinical training, expensive surgical and medical procedures, and therapeutic convalescence. Recognizing that recognizing that the success of the Bahamas hinges on the success of Grand Bahama, the DNA is resolute to revive the Grand Bahama economy and community through its comprehensive policies as follows. And we've said this before. I'm going to say it again. I said it 2 weeks, but I'm going to drum it down. We will create a new government ministry for Grand Bahama. We will have a minister for Grand Bahama. You know, these other boys said it before, you know, don't trust them. It didn't happen. Grand Bahama was placed on the back burner. And they want to talk now. They want to talk foolishness now. Both of them. Both of them. They will talk foolishness. There will be a cabinet minister at the helm to deal with all matters pertaining to Grand Bahama and the Port Authority. We will facilitate greater collaboration between the government, the Port Authority, and the Bahamian people to promote a dialogue for the development of business initiatives in Freeport for the benefit, listen to me, for the benefit of you. We will ensure the timely coordination and resourcing of foreign investment to expand the industrial base that Grand Bahama has come to rely on, and as a mechanism for accelerating employment. You know, Grand Bahama should be the industrial base, not only of the Bahamas, you know, but of this region. We need to think big. We need to think big, man. We just can't be thinking small. We will strengthen Grand Bahama tourism product, including West and East Grand Bahama. We will better promote Grand Bahama as a tourist destination with a viable plan for a resort hotel and a thriving second home market, and in so doing create a thriving city. I said this on the 2nd of July when we launched Grand Bahama, and I'm going to say it again. It has not changed. We'll create a cruise ship port in Hebron Town, West Grand Bahama, which will also accommodate domestic mail-boat transport. We will reopen West End Airport to facilitate tourism and commerce. We'll create a cultural center. The residents can take advantage of the many entrepreneurial opportunities that will abound through tourist activities and spin-off products. And as mentioned before, we will reestablish a movie and related business industry, film, sound editing, production, and distribution warehouse. Why not? Why not? Why not? Do you know what that can do for this economy? We are committed to reducing the cost of energy through the introduction of renewable energy sources and the exploration of other innovative means to make the cost of energy more affordable for Grand Bahama and more attractive to investors. We will create an energy island at Kings Cove, which will encompass all forms of renewable energy to coincide with the already known industrial capital of the Bahamas, where many incentives are already in place. We'll create an industrial park, a manufacturing environment for wind, turbines, solar panels, where international business is transacted and unskilled Bahamians can be trained while earning attractive salaries. I said we will develop a close relationship between the Port Authority and the government to ensure better synergy of programs, policies, and procedures to drive economic and social development for Freeport and for the benefit of the Grand Bahamians. We will ensure that the Hawksville Agreement is relevant to the challenges of today. We establish state-of-the-art facilities in East Grand Bahama to accommodate education and research, as College of the Bahamas already exists in this area, with particular focus on medicine, marine biology, and technology. Grand Bahama and the rest of the Bahamas, you deserve better. It is time that you get better.
Go green, yes, our Bahama land. If we want to prosper, we gotta take a stand. Time to put the nation back in the people's hand. I believe in a change, embrace the man. Go green, get rid of these.
Can I talk to you for a minute?
Are you one of those people that actually care about the direction our country is going?
Are you one of those who care about the future of our children?
Are you one of those people who care so deeply about your country that you have tried one party
And the other party.
Just to get the same results.
Are you one of those who care about a $4 billion national debt?
Are you one of those that says enough is enough?
The cost of living, the cost of electricity.
Environment.
Your children, their children,
my children,
Their dreams, about their hopes, their aspirations.
integrity, true representation.
Are you one of those who are tired of being told that you can't do something just because it hasn't been done before?
We can diversify our economy.
Bahamians cannot own, operate, or even manage. We can't recover until the U.S. recovers.
We can't own our own economy.
We can't control illegal immigration.
A third party can't work in this country.
The Bahamas does not have room for a third party?
Seriously? You do believe that we can do this, right?
I'm one of those that believe in Bahamian resilience.
We can achieve anything.
I'm a believer.
I believe that women should not just have a vote, but also a voice.
I am one of those.
I'm one of those that believe in the growth and development of our people.
Yeah, I'm one of those too.
I am as well.
Sorry, man. Sorry, I'm shooting a commercial. All right, okay. Mom says she's one of those too.
So the next time you see one of those on the streets, one of those with their posters,
One of them waving their flags.
We're in the band.
You just hold up one finger, just to show.
I am one of those too.